The Center for Audit Quality presents Profession in Focus.
Hello, and welcome to this edition of Profession in Focus. I'm Cindy Fornelli, the Executive Director of the Center for Audit Quality, and I'm very pleased today to have Michelle Edkins here with us. Michelle is a Managing Director and the Global Head of Investment Stewardship at BlackRock. Michelle, thanks so much for joining us. So I'm going to start with an issue that has been in the news a lot lately, and we've seen a lot of regulatory focus on it and a lot of discussion about it. I think there have even been some Wall Street Journal articles. But I wanted to ask you about companies' increasing use of non-GAAP measures. And of course, this is something we could probably spend the next hour talking about or day talking about. But I just wanted to get from your perspective, from an investor perspective, how does BlackRock approach the use of non-GAAP measures?
Sure. So the way we look at it is accounts should be trying to give investors a true and fair view of the company's performance and its prospects. And so to the extent that adjusting GAAP measures helps give investors that truer view, and particularly in relation to the underlying economics of the business, then we think it's a legitimate thing to do. But what we are not supportive of is where companies use it to give a perhaps rosier than it should be look at the fundamentals. And so when we talk about it being legitimate, we would talk about things that are exceptional, like truly one-off adjustments, such as restructuring charges at a company that isn't restructuring on a long-term or continual basis. Other areas, where we think companies can use it to give that truer view is where the methodology that they use is consistent, so that if you're comparing a company's performance over time, you're getting a consistent perspective. An alert or a red flag for us is where a company is constantly tweaking its methodology, which suggests there's a little bit more creativity than an investor might want to see. But ultimately, in our view, it's down to BlackRock's analysts to use their judgment to analyze the company, to understand the methodology, and to adapt that to our own methodology for valuing companies. And then follow up with companies where we think they might be being a little too creative or perhaps abusing the flexibility that's quite rightly in the system. But we depend on the expertise at BlackRock to ensure that we're getting that true and fair view.
I'm sure there'll be much more to come on this topic in the coming months, so we'll stay tuned. Now I want to switch over to transparency, because in a little bit of your discussion about how you all use non-GAAP, also you wanted there to be a transparent understanding. That's something that we've talked about before with respect to audit committee disclosures. And it's something that we at the CAQ watch. We've noticed over the last couple of years in our barometer that indeed audit committees are disclosing more to investors in either their audit committee report or elsewhere in the proxy, more about the important work that they do. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to get a sense from you. Are you pleased with the types of disclosure that you're seeing? Are you pleased with the pace of change? Or is that not something investors care as much about hearing from the audit committee?
We definitely care about hearing from the audit committee, and we definitely want to get a sense from their explanations about the depth and breadth of the work that they do. And in particular, how they are ensuring that their oversight of the audit process and their oversight of management around accounting and internal audit is robust enough to reassure us that shareholders' interests are being looked after. We think it's been good progress, it's pretty steady progress, but as ever in matters of corporate governance, it's an evolution. And we think that the pace of change could be a little faster. As ever, the leading companies have been very thoughtful about it and really talking to their investors and saying, what is it that you want to understand about what our audit committee does, and how can we communicate that in a way that's consistent with the reporting framework that I think is quite legitimately something they want to observe. I would note, though, that there's still a significant shortfall between what is reported by US companies and what's reported by companies, particularly in Europe. And it is not about the length, it's about the detail and giving investors this sense of what the committee has focused on and why that was the right information or the right projects to be focused on. That said, I think just as a general observation, European companies report a lot more about their governance framework and how the board is implementing that governance framework with management than US companies do.
Well, and speaking of that, particularly in the UK, there has been much more disclosure by auditors in their auditors' report. The UK government has required both audit committees and auditors report more about the work that they do. And as we know, the PCAOB here in the United States has a project underway, which I think will come to fruition this year, asking the auditors to talk more about critical audit matters. So is that something that you welcome, and do you think that that disclosure is helpful to the marketplace and to investors?
Yeah, I really do think it can be. And again, it's about being thoughtful about what helps investors understand the process and the company's risk and opportunity profile better. I think the value of a more detailed report from the auditors is it helps investors understand where the auditor has done deep dives and why those issues are the most critical issues for the auditor to have looked into in any one year. And that reinforces the quality of the management in the sense that it gives us an insight into how management are dealing with these very subjective issues, because of course there's a lot of judgment involved in accounting. Ultimately, we recognize that the management and the board are responsible for the accounting and the reporting, but it is helpful to know what the auditor is focused on.
So I think the three pieces, management's reporting, auditors reporting, and audit committee reporting. And as you said, I think in the UK in particular, perhaps companies are a little further along than we are here.
Yeah. But again, some companies are doing it really well in the UK, some are still learning.
So, like you said, an evolution.
Exactly.
Well, and then I can't let you go because given by your accent, I'm sure our viewers know that you are indeed from the UK. And as we all know, there have been a lot of changes in the UK over the last several weeks. And so I'm just curious to get your perspectives of what you think Brexit or the UK's exit, Britain's exit from the European Union might mean for our markets. And as an investor, is that something that you all are watching closely?
I think it's fair to say everyone's watching it closely, but investors in particular. And clearly Brexit brings in a fair deal more uncertainty with respect to many aspects of governance and policy making around audit and around sustainability as well, with the change in the British government and their approach to climate change. I thought it was very interesting what Theresa May's first speech as Prime Minister outlined, in particular the binding vote on executive pay and the potential for board seats to be held by employees and customers, which kind of ironically is taking the UK more towards a European model than ever it was before. But there's definitely a wait and see approach, I think, amongst investors in terms of what Brexit means longer term.
And I suppose we'll be in a wait and see mode here in the United States as the November elections.
Exactly.
So lots of change in the world in terms of governance and leadership. Well, Michelle, thank you so much for your time today. It was a real pleasure. And I would like to thank all of you for watching this edition of Profession in Focus.